I've seen the world, done it all, had my cake now. Diamonds brilliant in Bel Air now. Hot summer nights, mid-July, when you and I were forever wild. Crazy days, city lights, the way you'd play with me like a child. Will you still love me when I'm no longer young and beautiful? Will you still love me when I've got nothing but an aching soul? I know you will, I know that you will, I know that you will. Will you still love me when I'm no longer young and beautiful? Dear Lord, when I get to heaven, would you let me bring my man? When he comes, tell me that you'll let him in. Father, tell me if you can. Oh, that grace, oh, that body, oh, that face makes me wanna party. He's my sun, he makes me shine, shine bright like a diamond. Young and beautiful. Will you still love me when I got nothing but an aching soul? I know you will, I know that you will, I know that you will.
you very much, Team Riongo and your band, for that exciting introduction into what promises to be an exciting Engage session. It will be exhilarating, it will be entertaining, and of course, it must be an engaging Engage session. My name is Wango Kamundia, and I will be your hostess for the evening. So why are we here? A long time ago, a man met a woman at Toastmasters. Sema Toastmasters, to be exact, and they began to hone their capacity to speak and to change the world through the telling of stories. That man, Donald Bosire, and that woman, Agatha Juma, have found a platform and created a platform for many of us to tell our stories at Engage. Today, Engage comes full circle because tonight we feature 4 speakers from Toastmasters, speakers who are going to change our lives by telling us their personal stories, stories of transformation, stories of transition, and stories that we can take with us to change our little corners of the world. Once again, Engage is here to influence, inspire, and inform. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Engage Talks. Before we get into the heart of Engage, the storytelling, we have a chance to sample the soul of Engage, music, which is a crucial component of every Engage session. And tonight, to start us off, we get to hear from Chemutai Sage. Chemutai is a classically trained pianist and a self-trained guitarist. Her album, titled Expose Yourself, she says, is titled thus because it is a raw reflection of her life to the point at which she released it in 2015. Ladies and gentlemen, please keep your ears peeled and your hearts open for Chemutai Sage.
Take me back to the distance. Late night cooking in the kitchen. Hey, yeah, yeah. Dirty dancing in my room. Sending my love all over you. Because of the time we shared, time we lost in love with one another. Days we had paid the cost of losing heart's desire so soon. I'll be sending my love all over you. I still get so lost in the feeling, and I can't imagine losing you. If your heart could find a new reason for someone special to hold on to, I wonder if I would do, yeah. Because of the time we shared, time we lost in love with one another. Days we had paid the cost of losing heart's desire so soon. I'll be sending my love all over you. Take me back to the distance. Oh yeah, babe. Late night cooking in the kitchen. Dirty dancing in my room. I love the things you do, and I'm sending all of my love
Thank you very much, Chemutai, and welcome back to the beginning of the storytelling, the heart of Engage. Our first speaker this evening is a lady who plies her Toastmasters trade at Anchored Toastmasters. Anchored Toastmasters is the first club in East Africa to meet on a Friday evening. Jerry says she's a single and almost content mother of one. Tonight, she will be sharing her experience with us, and I ask you to join me in giving a warm and rousing welcome to Jerry Gadi.
When you work in the same organization for many years, you become familiar with the comings and goings of this particular organization. Your desk smells of you, and you personalize it with photos of your cat, your dog, your spouse, depending on who looks good. The office seat even has the shape of you. You are familiar with what works and what does not work in this organization. And you can almost drive to the office in autopilot and walk around with your eyes closed. You know where all your colleagues sit, and so when you come in, you can say good morning without looking at them. You say good morning, good morning. Everyone is where they should be. I had worked in this organization for more than 10 years, and I knew all about it. I was familiar with every corner. Like being in an old marriage, I knew which feathers to ruffle and which feathers to polish. Quite comfortable and knowing my place in it. Very comfortable, familiar, and conversant is how a company merger found me. And company mergers come like a rumor from a distance, like an affair affecting an old marriage. Disrupting the way of life. The company culture is disrupted. New responsibility, new bosses, new strategies. And you begin to wonder, what is my place in this place? And occasionally you have an argument with yourself and you wonder, surely they wouldn't let me go. I've been here. I am that important. Arguments that do not hold water at the end of the day. In 2018, in the post-merger integration, I lost my job at that organization that had worked for such a long time. As I sat in the car park on the day I received the message, I had mixed feelings, leaving home and not sure of what the future holds. This was a season with so many unfamiliar moments, wondering what to do with my time, and a lot of many other questions. The first sense of being unfamiliar happened with my identity. I was experiencing an identity vacuum. We live in a society that leans heavily on the question, what do you do for a living? To start a conversation. And whenever this question was thrown at me, I had a different answer for every day, mumbling different things. Luckily for me, on a Sunday morning, most people do not ask you what you do for a living. And I struggled. You see, the company had always told me who I am. All my adult life working in corporate meant that somebody always told me who I was. You are this assistant. You are that executive. The corporate world had told me who I was. But now, the corporate world had thrown me out. Who was I? The second thing I struggled with was belonging, a sense of belonging to some group, a certain sense of ownership. When you leave corporate employment, you do not just leave the organization, but you leave a place that you report daily. 8 hours that are accounted for, you have to be seated at your desk or engaged in company business. But here I was, without a people, without a language. No more speaking of key performance indicators. Blue ocean, we're going to new markets. You lose a language, you lose friendships, or friendships you thought you had. But I call them proximity buddies. People you see every morning, people you see every day, people you see month after month, because they work in the same space as you do. But now you can't take them with you because you have moved from the industry and you have moved from the language. 3 years later, I am here and I have found my new title, I have found my new identity, and I have owned it and made it mine. But it was a process. I began this process of finding my identity first by reconnecting with old friends. Isn't it amazing how old friends have a lot of data on you? Old friends are like a mirror in your house. The mirror in your house has seen you go through different stages of change, yet the mirror is faithful, and the mirror does not judge. The mirror in your house. Those are your old friends. I am privileged to have several friends that have been long-standing in my life. And a lot of times when I doubted myself, they said, but you have always been like this. This is what we have always seen over the years, and this is a person that you always were. This helped affirm and validate the desires and the stirrings that I was finding inside my life, helping me realize that I had not changed because I was titleless, but I am still the person that I am. The second thing I did about my identity vacuum was to take a pen and paper. And this was not about my CV. It was about finding out who was Njeri. What are the jobs I had worked at? What skills had I gained there? I sat down and wondered, what are my passions? What are my greatest accomplishments? What value had I added in all the areas that I had been in my life? A harvesting of the things that make up me. And this helped, because a lot of times what we are is inside us, and we only present the little that speaks of the job we currently do. So you wonder, are you just a marketer because they made you're in marketing? You wonder, because they have made me an assistant, am I just an assistant? But sitting down with a pen and paper helped me harvest all that there is about me. What are my passions? Why does my heart beat? And this brought a lot on the table that I could use in making up my identity. The other thing I struggled with was being tribeless, not finding a people I belonged to. And for this, I looked for groups that were engaged in things that interested me. One of those groups was Toastmasters International, a public speaking club. I had earlier joined this club with an aim of seeking to articulate my public speaking skills. But then in this group, I found a people that spoke in the same language. And it helped hold me before I found out who I was so that I could find out who to associate with. The corporate world just puts you in a tribe and puts you in, the schools determine the tribes that you own, the corporates determine the tribe. But what about when the organization throws you out, or when you leave that organization? To which group do you belong? I found that grouping in Toastmasters and found like-minded individuals that had self-development agendas for themselves. Inside that large tribe of Toastmasters, I also found the sub-tribes of people that I could identify with, the self-employed, the entrepreneurs, the people in different areas of transition. Today, I have found my voice. I am a brand storyteller and a personal branding coach. I have found my title, and I have owned it. I have realized that finding your identity when you leave employment is a process. Do not hurry it up. And once you find it, you find it. I speak to you who is sitting with your title in the office and you're wondering, this title they have given me, is this all there is? I am here to tell you that there is a richness. There is a richness within you. There is more of you than just your title. Begin right now, while you're still in that organization, to find out all the things that make up you. And once you find yourself, find the tribe that you can identify with before you have to leave the tribe that you currently are in. If you need to step out because the organization is changing, step out fearlessly or in spite of it. Find your voice because the world is waiting to hear that voice. Find your voice. Do you know the sound of your voice?
Thank you very much, Jerry, for that powerful reminder that life is really about connection, about finding our tribes and thriving with our tribes. Thank you for laying it bare, for reminding us that it is okay to feel like you don't belong. It's okay to feel confused, but there's always hope. There's always the possibility that you can change the world by finding your voice, learning to listen to what your voice says to you, and then sharing that voice with others. I encourage us to introspect on the messages that we're receiving today and finding out what it is that we have been called to do and how it is that we are going to apply ourselves to these possibilities to make a difference where we belong. Next up, we have a Toastmaster who is a charter member or a founder member of East Africa's friendliest Toastmasters Club, Rafiki Toastmasters Club. Rafiki is also the only Toastmasters Club in Kenya and perhaps East Africa that meets every week. Tonight, we have an ambassador from Rafiki, Kimani Kibudu, who will be sharing his story of transition and transformation with us. Please join me in welcoming the eloquent and energetic Kimani Kibudu.
One of my favorite quotes is from the Zen Shin, and it states, "A flower does not worry about competing with a flower next to it. It just blooms." I was born as a firstborn to a firstborn of a firstborn. To you who are firstborns, you can relate with the fact that you are not only a secondary parent to your siblings, but also you are a role model to your siblings. Being in this situation, I knew that I had to be perfect in order to be a role model to them. And being perfect meant that I had to put on various masks in order to look perfect and never to show any flaw. I had to be a people pleaser. Like a car starting its journey from a parking lot, you start at zero and continuously catch momentum. That was my people pleasing journey. And I started from zero, immediately at birth, where I was born as the heaviest child at 4.25 kilograms. You can imagine, the doctors were pleased. I became so good at it that parents would often tell their children, "Why can't you be like Kimani?" Being an adolescent in this phase, it now meant that I wanted to please my peers, and mostly the girls. I realized that people-pleasing was the only way that I knew how to be loved. But as the old adage goes, only principles last. And for me, this people-pleasing was not a principle, and it will eventually crumble. And it did. It crumbled as I joined my 20s. As a 20-year-old, I disliked church. Not because I did not believe in God, because I did. I disliked church because above there being so many religions with the same golden rule, and There being so many denominations in one religion, I still didn't understand why we had to have all of this. However, this was the woke reason. The real reason why I did not like church was that it wasn't hype. It wasn't lit. That and the fact that I dreaded the questions that the pastor always asked. Ask your neighbor this. Tell your neighbor this. However, being in my mother's house, I had to attend church, whether I liked it or not. On this particular Sunday, I went to church as usual. Went to church, sat at the back, and braced myself for another 2 hours. This was not to be an ordinary Sunday. On this Sunday, this girl sat next to me. She was no ordinary girl, or so I thought. She had been around church, and I had seen her walk around and move around, and I had a crush on her. She was beautiful, but I did not have any intentions of pursuing her, as I thought that she was out of my league. On this particular Sunday, though, she had sat next to me, and as I looked at her, I saw why I had a crush on her. Her face was so smooth. It's as if she had been showering in that milk and honey that the Israelites had been promised in Canaan. Her eyes, almond-shaped, exposing her enigmatic personality, and a smile ear to ear, exposing her beautiful snow-white teeth. And I dreaded it. I dreaded it because it made my mind just go blank. And today, other than all those other days, I was looking forward to those questions that the pastor always asked, because I knew that would be the perfect icebreaker for me. And indeed, the pastor came through and he asked, ask your neighbor. And I did, breaking the ice and starting to communicate with this girl. And eventually, I asked her on a first date. Eager to please this girl, on an average campus student's budget, I went on to Google and searched places to go on a date in Nairobi on a budget. To no avail. I did not find any place that suited this beautiful girl. She then suggested to me that we go for karaoke. And I was elated. We went on our karaoke date. And from this karaoke date, I could see how much she loved dancing, how much she loved partying. And I could see that this story, this fairy tale, was being built. She will be the Clyde, and I will be her Bonnie. We will tell this beautiful fairy tale story to all the world. It was me and her against the world. But as days turned into months, our beautiful fairy tale started to crumble. The cracks in our story began to reveal themselves. If we weren't partying, we would be fighting. Fighting because she was exposing some of my insecurities as a 20-year-old male. Insecurities around my finances, and even fighting over some ex-boyfriend drama. Not knowing any other way to love, I knew I had to people please, as I was accustomed to. And I decided that I would have to go even harder in partying in order to please this girl. And I did. On this particular day, I partied a little bit too hard, and she had to take me home. On encountering my mother, she told my mother that she had found me seated at the entrance of a mall, alone, left by my friends, and stranded. And since she did not trust Uber drivers, she decided that she would take me home by herself. I sat there devastated and angered that she had betrayed me. How could someone who said loved me this much betray me? The next morning, I had to face my mom in shame that she had never seen me the way that she had seen me, and also knowing that I had been betrayed. expecting to be cajoled by my mother, she took a different path and she told me, Samuel, as she often called me, I know you, and this is not you. People often fall, but the beauty in us people is in how we rise up. And I know that you will rise up. In case you were wondering, I will still love you, even if you were a thief. I broke down. I felt a huge burden that I had carried had been lifted. What I once felt, the need to constantly please people, had eventually been alleviated by just 10 simple words. I will still love you, even if you were a thief. I decided then to let go of my people pleasing and embark on a journey of authenticity. It has not been easy because that is all that I have known since my birth. But as I walked that journey, as I stumbled, like a child stumbles in their journey to learn how to walk, I got handheld by a therapist here and a fellow friend there who showed me that authentic love was truly what I should always and only aspire to.
Thank you very much, Kimani, for that powerful story. It resonated with me because I also am a firstborn of a firstborn. And this need to please people, this need to fit in without knowing why I fitted in, it plagued me for all of my childhood. And my saving grace came from hearing two friends of mine say to me, feel nothing for anybody or anything. Very difficult words to understand, but what I took out of that message was be yourself, find your true self. And I think Kemani's reminder that the best love is authentic love, and perhaps also that authentic love begins with authentic self-love, telling yourself that you're enough, telling yourself that it's okay not to fit in, as long as you are being true to yourself. And this is the message that I will carry with me today, and I hope that you too will carry as you go along your daily business. Now we take a music break, and we hear from the second music director at Engage, Emma Ceruto, who loves to build ideas and dreams through music. But beyond music, she also builds dreams as an architect. Please join me in welcoming Emma Ceruto.
Pau kwa pakawa, umesaidia vipi wenzako hawa? Nalia sahani ya mchele, wengine wafanja tumbo yako mbele. Giza ya mwizi, lakini mchana tuwaogopa siku hizi. Kiboko kwa mkorofi, maovu yako yanapigiwa makofi. Dua la mnyonge halimpati mwewe, mwenye nguvu mpishe, kilio changu kisikize. Nalia tafadhali, songa kando tafadhali. Na nilisoma shule gani? Wazazi wangu kabila gani? Eti chomo hili langu sio simu, hamuelewi yaliyo muhimu. Toa la mnyonge halimpati mwewe, mwenye nguvu mpisha kilio changu kisikize. Toa la mnyonge halimpati mwewe, nalia, nalia. Paukwa pakawa, na umesaidia vipi wenzako hawa? Oh, unalia sahani ya mchele, wengine wafanja tumbo yako mbele. Yeah, giza ya mwizi, lakini mchana tuwaogopa siku hizi. Kiboko kwa mkorofi, maovu yako yanapigiwa makofi. Toa la mnyonge halimpati mwewe, mwenye nguvu mpisha kilio changu kisikize. Toa la mnyonge halimpati mwewe, nalia, nalia, nalia.
Wow, wow, wow. We are going here from 0 to 140 miles per hour. It's getting better. Now we get into another segment where we get to hear a story from another Toastmaster who plies his trade at Smart Speak Toastmasters. Eric Opon is a consultant interpreter in English, Swahili, and French. Beyond those accomplishments, he is the reigning champion in Toastmasters East Africa at Table Topics. And Table Topics, for those of you who've never been to a Toastmasters meeting, really means that if you ask Eric any question, he will answer you at the drop of the hat and make sure that he wows you within 1 or 2 minutes. Please join me in welcoming Eric Opon.
The year is 1999, and the place is Nakuru County. A young 9-year-old boy goes to school one Friday, and he doesn't feel well. But he doesn't tell anyone because he's supposed to man up, as we were taught from an early age. He goes through the motions, goes to class, plays football, has his lunch, and when the bell goes at 1 o'clock, he makes his way home. Mom is not home. Dad is not home either. At 7 p.m., That Friday evening, I collapsed at home. I woke up 5 hours later in a hospital bed with my mother deep in prayer, hoping that I would come through. And when she saw me, she smiled. I thought the worst was over. It had only begun. The doctors diagnosed me as having malaria after they took a blood sample. There was a bigger issue that lay below, and it would only come to pass 2 weeks on when the same incident happened, only this time I was in class. I didn't even know when I collapsed that day. I just found myself back in that hospital bed, ward number 211, Evans Sunrise Hospital in Nakuru. The doctors were baffled. What would happen to this really energetic, bubbly, handsome young man? And they recommended further tests. My mother sought the help of my grandfather, now late, who was a medical doctor in the city. And I was brought to MP Shah Hospital in that March of 1999. They did a scan and they discovered that I have seizure disorder. This was an episode where the seizures got the better of me. Because seizures are very delicate and sensitive, they can hamper a child's growth. So I was put on medication for a period of 1 year to put them under control. Satisfied after my scan and tests had finally discovered the elephant in the room and the ugly monster that dared want to devour me at such a tender age, I returned home with my mother. Apparently, that was the start of something that would change the course of my life forever. 2 days after we returned home, on a Sunday night, my auntie, who was living with us, sexually abused me. I remember it because it was 11 o'clock at night on a Sunday, the same year of 1999. Life would never be the same again. Anyone would say that, well, why don't you go and tell mommy that you were violated? Why wouldn't you go and say something to dad who considers you the apple of his eye? But who would believe me? I was 9 and she was older. They would say that I'm looking to just find something evil against her. And I would be on the receiving end of it. I would get a hiding because my father is a strict disciplinarian. And so I retreated to silence because it was the only language that I knew. It was the only language that I could speak. It didn't last for 1 year, no 2. It lasted for more than I could have imagined. Roughly, my whole childhood was robbed. My innocence was taken away from me, and I carried this scar with me until I couldn't anymore. I went through the motions like any normal child would, but it wasn't the same. From that moment on, I felt filthy. I felt unworthy. I felt like the universe had conspired to just destroy me. Imagine coming back from hospital, getting medication to treat your seizures, and then your own family breaks you, robs you of your innocence, and much more importantly, robs you of what you considered a lovely and happy home. It made me subject to so much at school. A year later, in the year 2000, my classroom teacher, when giving advice about careers and who would succeed in school, in a class of 62 pupils, made a very, very curt remark about me. And she said, "Suppose one day I go to the market and then on my left side I might see a market hawker carrying a sack of maize on their shoulder, and they're asking me to give way. And when I look at them closely, they would resemble Ericopon." My entire class of 62 pupils laughed at me. I still have their laugh at the back of my mind, 21 years on. And that changed the trajectory of my academic pursuits. I became among the last in class in performance. It affected my esteem. Imagine, you're 1.87 meters back then, but you're not as audacious or your shoulders are not held high, and you end up always walking with your head down. You consider yourself not a human anymore, but a lesser being. Maybe you believe, like the writers say, that you're a child of a lesser God. Maybe you think you're not worth all this. So you let the world have its way, and mostly, when you let the world have its way, it changes the script of your life. That's what mine went through. I underwent the worst form of bullying, the worst form of abuse you would from friends. Not because I had less self-belief in myself, but because I carried a scar that started as a wound, but that I let break me down. Through humanity, we learn that resilience is knowing what matters at key moments. The one person who I owe my whole life to and who taught me that art is my mother. Because one, she was there at my lowest when I almost lost my life. And she worked as hard as possible to make sure that I would have my health. She's my prayer warrior, my first love. I owed her the chance to succeed, to see her smile, because her smile makes me wear one too. And so I pulled myself back up, academically speaking, went through the motions, got good enough grades to take me to a decent school, Menengai High School. That's when the course of my life started to change, because I discovered my love for language, for literature, for poetry, which is the way I express myself best when the world doesn't understand me, doesn't understand me well. Still, in all this, I never had the audacity or courage to talk to my parents, to just tell them what had happened to me. Even after my auntie passed away, I still didn't have the courage to let it out. I went through high school like a normal teenager would, trying to discover, trying to explore, trying to make sense of what future you would want. But still, I felt like a second-class citizen. The emotion never left. I always felt filthy, unworthy. I thought that once I graduated, when I would find a relationship, maybe I would confide to the people or to the person who would love me or who would wish to spend the rest of their lives by my side. How wrong I was. Every time I would confide in that deep little secret, the person who was in my life at that moment would cease to be my girlfriend and become ex-girlfriend. They excluded themselves from my life. The solitude was too much. It was unbearable. And I did not understand how to let it out. Until one time when I was servicing a meeting in the second half of 2020 on my birthday by the Mastercard Foundation about resilience. And one of the speakers, a clinical psychology expert by the name Tabitha Mpamira, was speaking about trauma. She has a TED talk on the same, and she said during her presentation that trauma not transformed is transferred. And she went on to explain what had happened to her as a child. As a refugee in a Ugandan refugee camp, fleeing from the scars that had been visited upon them by the Rwandan genocide, she was raped by one of her uncles and another caregiver. She had lived through the same thing that I had been going through, albeit in a different land. She had gone through worse, but had chosen to forgive and had chosen to heal and no longer carry those scars. And ladies and gentlemen, right there and then, I think I found my saving grace. So on my 30th birthday, 21 years after the act had happened, I vowed to do something. I vowed to finally open up to my parents. It still wasn't easy. I struggled. Would they break down when they heard this news? How would they see me? What would they say? It had been so long. She had already passed on. There was no one to point an accusing finger to. I also took this decision because of another monumental occurrence that took place. One of those people who excluded themselves from my life is the mother of my son. After that meeting by Mastercard Foundation, I vowed I would not pass on the trauma that I had carried for so long and that looked like a never-ending migraine. The ones that come when you least expect and they show up when you least desire. I was not going to pass that to my son. He was the one who gave me the extra impetus and the extra force to finally open up. I owed it to him because I'm his father. I'm the one he runs and comes home to, the one he calls Papa. If Papa wasn't okay, Louis wasn't okay. And I treat my son like a king. And so early this year, I sat my parents down at different occasions and finally let it all out. The emotion was palpable, it was understandable. I'm the firstborn in my family. My parents are also firstborn. That comes with a lot of leadership, responsibilities. Whether we like it or not, we're supposed to show the way for the ones who follow. It broke my mother. It broke her deeply. But she was happy that I had come through because I could do something to spare myself the agony of carrying this scar for a further 21 or more years. On March 20th, 2019, I suffered a repeat episode of the seizures. One day when I was just too stressed and I just imagined the past. The skeletons came out. The monsters came back for me. I was taken to Mater Hospital. Like it happened 10 years before, I was misdiagnosed. They thought it was a stomach infection. A friend asked me to seek a second opinion and they discovered my seizures had come back. Like all stories of adversity and triumph, my parents have taught me that when you have a smooth interior and a tough exterior, you can overcome anything. I was back on medication, but I can safely tell you that in 3 months' time, I'll be off medication, and this time I have made it intentional. I am not going back to that ever again. My parents are still struggling to process this information because it's been 21 years. That's a lifetime. So much has happened. We've all grown. I am no longer a child. I have a son, and I want to give him the best family when that time comes, and when that person who's willing to accept who I am finally comes through. There has been hope. There are those who love me for what I am. There are those who are beginning to accept that beyond what you see at face value, there's something deeper. It just wasn't expressed enough or earlier. This incident has not been easy to share with the world. It hasn't even been easy for me. I had been angry, but I retreated into silence. It was a language that understood me. We were bosom buddies, but in the darkness we stayed. I don't know, maybe that's the reason my complexion is a bit special. Darkness has a way with me. But jokes aside, I watch my son as he plays with me, as he learns his steps and as he learns to speak. And I want to protect him from the harm. I want to protect him from all the iniquities that the world might have in store. I have carried a scar for 21 years. It followed me like a civil war that was never ending. It never gives you peace. You always remember the gunshots, the grenades. You remember the broken families, broken homes. My heart was a debris, but Tabitha helped me pick up the pieces. And I might not know her, but I am forever grateful for the lesson. As an expert now, I'm a translator and interpreter with organizations, and I've had the privilege of working in several countries in Africa. I have learned that I never looked at myself as the carrier of hope. I never held on to hope that I actually believed I was worthy. But until I learned to deal with my trauma, until I looked into my son's eyes and made that vow, I will never put him through suffering, but I will give him what life never gave me. I have learned to smile better. I've learned to take a minute, slow down, and just smell the beauty that is this world. Everyone would look at you, well, you're 1.92 meters, it's no fault of your own. It's nature and genes that work out, but even tall people can get broken. Don't be lied to. We're all human at the end of the day. But someone said, we sometimes look at the stars in the sky and we forget the flowers that bloom right under our feet. For the longest time, my sexual abuse incident had made that flower wither. I now watch it grow with as much intentionality to live anew. And I watch it grow not only because I owe myself a second chance at life, not only because I owe myself the capacity to live and to enjoy of what this life has for me, but because I want to do what my heart has always loved. I want to help people discover their greatness. I didn't see this in me earlier. Everyone else did. Now, even in my professional world, when people see me and single me out for opportunities and possibilities, they want me to lead. They want me to take that first step. They trust me. I didn't trust myself that much. But that new flower in my garden, I'm going to water it. I'm going to watch it bloom. I'm going to see its sweetness as it develops in my garden. And I'm going to share that hope in the world. Because there's no need to hide anymore. Plus, I can't hide. I'm 6'3".
Thank you, Eric, for sharing a deeply personal experience and reminding us of what it means to carry a heavy load, calling us to be empathetic, calling us not to judge by the cover of the book that we see. Eric, by telling that story, you've triumphed over many adversities and chosen to build others by reminding them that it's okay to share their stories of defeat, to share their stories of vulnerability, and perhaps to light a candle for somebody else. So thank you, and we encourage you to keep transforming that trauma into energy that translates into a better world for all of us.
Why stories? Why not stories? I mean, stories make the world go round.
Storytelling is a part of life. From time immemorial, people have sat around fires, in their living rooms, and told stories. These stories have immortalized culture. They've been able to show a pattern in why we do the things that we do. And storytelling is even more important now because it shows who we are, not just for ourselves, but for the organizations we work for what we stand for, and for what we believe in.
More importantly, in a corporate organization setting, the most impactful leaders are the ones who tell a story of the strategy that we're pursuing and what we hope to get at the end of this strategy, as opposed to words that have been cascaded down from HQ and this is what we need to do. Because stories bring relatability and they customize to our situation.
Our final speaker for this evening is Elishiba Msengeti Poriot. Elishiba, as our speaker tonight, carries the sole privilege of sharing a home club with Dawn and Agatha, a masterful storyteller who is an educator, cares about social impact, youth and women empowerment, and whose friends and family say about her, she's kind, she's generous, she's fun-loving, and will never pass a chance to bring people together. Tonight, she will be sharing her story of transition and transformation. Please welcome Elishiba Msengeti Poriot.
In October of 2016, I was invited to an interview, which was an interview for my dream job. The call came on my birthday, and that was quite serendipitous. And as fate would have it, I actually got the job. So in 2017, I started my dream job. In fact, it felt like everything I had done prior to this was to prepare me for this very moment. I had prayed about it. In fact, I had prayed for a job where I could live and work in the same place, and that prayer had been answered. I worked very hard at this job. I did not want to mess it up. I didn't want to mess up a gift that had been given to me so generously. I worked so hard that there were 3 people in my marriage: my husband, myself, and the job. I would wake up at 3 a.m., not to pray, but to send emails. That's how hard I worked. I gave it my all. Then in 2019, there was talk of restructuring. And one day, on 3rd May of 2019, I was invited to a meeting in a boardroom. This meeting ended with my job ending. It felt like I had been hit by a big stone. I was so shocked because the last person I had expected to lose their job would be myself. I remember sitting in that boardroom after the others had left, the people who I had the meeting with, and looking around and remembering how I had sat in that same boardroom, attending meetings, conducting interviews, contributing to big decisions because I was in senior management. And now this same boardroom was where I received this very harsh sentence. I felt betrayed, disappointed, and most of all, completely unprepared. I called my uncle. Why did I call my uncle? Because it felt like this moment required somebody older than I was. And you see, my dad had passed away when we were quite young, and so this uncle was the closest to my father. And I called him and explained to him what had happened. And he said two things. First, he said, he's a HR practitioner. He said, don't sign anything first, right now. And secondly, Elishiba, you're still young. You're going to be okay. Then he asked if I had called Poriot. Poriot is my husband. And I said I hadn't. And so I needed to now call Poriot. And when I did, he was in a meeting. And so I put on a very light voice and said, no, it's okay. When you're done, just call me. And later he did. The third person I called was my mother. My mom and I are very close. She's my best friend and confidant. And she's also as emotional as I am. So she started crying. And I also was crying, obviously. And I felt like I had disappointed her. And of course, later, I realized she was crying for me as her child, the way you would as a parent when you feel sad about something that has happened to your child. The last thing she felt was disappointment. I then knew that I needed to, at some point, leave the boardroom. I sat there for about an hour, crying and preparing myself to leave that room because I knew once I left it, I now needed to meet the world. And I knew I had to leave the compound, and so I got in the car and started driving. And as I was driving away, and I wasn't sure where I was going, I started to ask myself, had I been too happy about this job? Was I presumptuous? Had I been proud about it? Why was God punishing me this way? It also felt that perhaps this was the beginning of the rest of my life, which was going to be a life of misery. I had agreed to meet with my husband at a mall, at a certain mall, so we met for lunch at a restaurant that we usually met. And it was very interesting sitting there and thinking, these people think that I'm the same Elishiba who was here last week. What they don't know is that this is a new Elishiba who has just lost her job. And I remember when Poriot showed up, the first thing he said, which he says often, is, or rather was, we're going to be okay. In my mind, I was like, well, that's easy for you to say. You're not the one who's lost a job. Part of me leaving the job also entailed my family having to move. And this was really heavy on me because they had moved on my account. And now I had to destabilize them again and find another home for all of us. I kept asking myself, will this mean that the children have to change schools? I'm disrupting everybody's life. And that was very painful. There was a farewell party that was held by all staff for me. And I sat there, and people were giving, tributes about Elishiba and saying how I had inspired them and saying good things, kind things, amazing things, heartwarming things. But it was very confusing because I was wondering, so if I'm all those things, how is it that I'm the one who's leaving? Am I really that great? And it wasn't in a way that I was being pessimistic about it. I did take to heart what everybody said, and it was very reassuring to know that I hadn't completely failed. But it was indeed very confusing. We moved to our new house on a Friday, and I remember going to pick the children up from school. And in the hour or so that I was gone, I came back to find that our help had actually rearranged the kitchen and put things in the cupboards. And I was so thankful for her because I did not have it in me to start doing all of that, because everything I did felt to me like a reminder of how I had failed my family. I remember what was very strange for me was that the caretaker would come during the week, to fix different things, as it is in a new house when you move in. And they would always find me in a dera. And I kept wanting to say to them that this is not the real Elishiba. The real Elishiba wears power suits and, makes decisions, influences policies. And, I kept wanting to say it, but, there wasn't really any appropriate way of bringing that into the conversations. It was a new identity. But I remember one day, my son, they were given homework and they had to write, those homeworks where you have to write 5 sentences about my mother. And he asked me, so, Mom, I should write my mother is a? And I thought, oh my gosh. I felt very judged by that question because your mother is your mother. Just write, your mother is kind, she's short. You don't need to write my career. What was also very interesting, I think, for me, was this realization that all along I had had lots of successes. I had come to actually expect success. I had assumed that it would always happen. And I remember asking one of my cousins whether that was the end of my days of glory. Because in my mind, maybe we have like days of glory in our lives, and then you have days of doom, and then you die. And, she reassured me that, that my days of glory were not over. And in fact, soon after we left the organization and moved to this new place, I had an event at my old high school where I serve at the Alumni Association. And I was one of the chief organizers of this event. And I remember doubting myself and asking, what will I say to these girls? What right do I have to stand in front of them when I have clearly failed? And I remember Poriot, my husband, reminding me that I was going there as an alumni, not as whatever job I had. And so we went ahead and had the event, and it was a success. But it was very interesting to try and introduce myself beyond saying what class of so-and-so. It was very interesting to not have a title to introduce myself by. But this was the beginning of a new life. Later then, I started to think about, well, maybe I need to find a new job. And what was very interesting was the first time I tried to write a cover letter, it sounded phony. It sounded like, how you write and you say, I work well under pressure. Those things we write. I can work well without supervision. I make decisions. I'm a team player. All those things. They sounded very phony, and I felt that whoever would read my cover letter could tell that it wasn't coming from a place of sincerity. And so it took some time before I could even apply for jobs. I asked myself, was I going to become those women who have to ask their husbands for money to go to the salon? And I really did not want to see myself that way, because I had gone to school, I had gotten good education, I had gotten scholarships, studied abroad. So the Elishiba Msengeti Poriot that I knew was not supposed to be one sitting at home wearing a dera and waiting to be given money to even go do a blow dry. As time went by, and the COVID pandemic came, I went through coaching, and that really helped me to try and to realize that there was more that I could offer the world. And it is from that that feeling of what else can I do? What else can I give the world? Is my experience and education all going to waste, or shall I use it for something? And this was the birth of the Classroom Outside. The Classroom Outside is this organization that I founded where we train people on life skills and leadership. And we do this for young people, youth, teens, and adults. But let me tell you, getting to the Classroom Outside took work. And I remember the first time that I had to do the first session. And, I wanted to start with the sessions on social media first, like an Instagram live. And I remember I made a poster, and I made it myself. I used collage. I couldn't even trust myself enough to ask anybody, to expose myself by asking someone to make a poster for myself. So I made the poster. And I remember, it was on a Friday, and this session was supposed to happen on a Saturday. And then I remember asking my husband, how do I share this post? And he said, the best way is to put it on your WhatsApp status. And I said, but on WhatsApp status, everyone who has my number will see it. And he said, yes, that's the point. They're supposed to see it so that they can attend this event. And I was so terrified because I thought that the people who would see the poster would laugh at me, would think, who does she think she is? What right does she have to teach us anything about life, about success, about leadership, about life skills? And I discovered, I guess, in that moment, just how small this experience had made me feel. The following morning, I woke up at 4 a.m., even though my session was actually starting at 11 a.m., I needed all these hours to prepare. And I remember just sitting in my living room and crying and saying, I'm actually doing this. I'm doing this. I'm putting myself out as Elishiba. And whoever attends is going to attend not because I am Elishiba associated to a certain organization, but because they want to hear from me as the person, as an individual. And so at 11, I went live, and people showed up, and that was the beginning of my healing. It was not the end, but the beginning of my healing. Because just as my coach had told me, I realized I had something still to offer the world. I realized that there were so many people who had gone through issues, problems, tough times in life, but never had really a platform where they could share these stories with other people. And so it was very nice. Every session we had, every weekend, it brought people together, and they talked about their experiences. I think one of the things I realized is that failure is sometimes such a private thing. We hide it so well. We cover it. We even cover it with pictures, with smiles, even makeup. Yeah? And there was something very liberating about being able to strip ourselves of that and say, actually, here, I failed. And some of the people that I had really admired also got a chance to share their own experiences of failure. What did this experience teach me, or how did it change me? Changed me in many ways. For one, I'm more empathetic now when somebody says they've lost their job or their business has gone under. I know what it feels. Secondly, I don't ever take it for granted when something goes well, when I'm successful in anything. I think I had become a bit presumptuous of success. Now, anything that goes well, I am super, super grateful for it. The other thing that I realized, which was, I guess, maybe what this whole experience was supposed to teach me, was that there was an Elishiba that exists, that has value, devoid of any title. And so now, I'm not very keen on titles. They don't say much about who you really are. Not to say they're not important. They're great. But I'm not as keen on them. And I wonder if you also have the same experience and perhaps are wondering, devoid of whatever title you hold, who you really are. Lastly, remember how I told you I felt like I had been hit by a big stone? And I was asking myself, I prayed about this, and we are told God will fight your battles. And I was like, how did he really fight this battle? How am I the Goliath? How am I the one who's being hit and falling? What I realized is that you can rise again after failure. And so I since found another job. The classroom outside is still running. And what I learned is that you can rise again. Was this my last failure? Probably not. But the next failure and the next and the next, I'll be better prepared for them because I have gone through this and come out on the other side. Still working on myself, still healing, but definitely not where I was when the experience started.
When all is stripped away, who are you? Are you the person that your business card says that you are? Are you a mother, a father, a friend, kind, fun-loving, quiet, reliable? When all is stripped away, what is it that will carry you through the tempests of the storm? Tonight, I have been reminded of a story of a man who met 3 workers on a construction site. Of the first, he asked, "What are you doing?" And the man said, "I am laying the bricks for a wall." Of the second, he asked, "What are you doing?" And he replied, "I am building a wall." But the third one, the most productive, the most energetic, received the same question, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I am building a cathedral for the Almighty." When you look at what you do you see it as just a job? Do you see it as just a cog in the wheel? Or do you understand what impact your daily action carries and builds for the next generation or for those around you? It's easy to wake up every morning and join the rat race and run furiously at it, go to bed exhausted and feel unfulfilled. But each of us have been reminded today that what we do is important. We may not see it as everyone else does. We may be absolutely gutted when it has to come to an end because of factors beyond our control. But what we do is important, and we must carry that dream, that vision of making a difference and transpose it into what we do every day. Now we get a chance to cap it all with a performance from Chemutai Sage and Ceruto Emma. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for the Kalenjin sisters.
She was more like a beauty queen from a movie scene. I said, "Don't mind, but what do you mean? I am the one who would dance on the floor in the round." She said, "I am the one who would dance on the floor, in the round. She told me her name was Billie Jean. She caused a scene. Then every head turned with eyes that dreamed of being the one who danced on the floor in your round. But people always told me, be careful what you do. Don't go around breaking young girls' hearts. My mama always told me, be careful who you love. Be careful what you do, 'cause a lie becomes the truth. Billie Jean is not my lover. She's just a girl who says that I am the one. But the kid is not my son. She says I am the one, but the kid is not my son. Oh yeah. For 40 days and for 40 nights, love was on her side. But who can stand when she's in the mind? Her schemes and her plans. Who dance on the floor, in your round. Oh yeah, yeah. People always told me, be careful what you do. Don't go around breaking a girl's heart. My mama always told me, be careful who you love. Be careful what you do, 'cause the lie becomes the truth. Billie Jean is not my lover. She's just a girl who claims that I am the one, but the kid is not my son. She says I am the one, but the kid is not my son. Son says I am the one, but the kid is not my son.
What a wonderful rendition of Billie Jean. A fitting commemoration of Michael Jackson many years on. Thank you very much, Ceruto. Thank you very much, Chemutai. And may you continue making a difference through music. Growing up, I remember being academically capable, being able to rise to the top of my class, particularly in mathematics, which I loved and still love, and being able to get away with mischief because I did well in school. But in 1991, I was 9 years old. It was a Friday. And we had our swimming lesson right after lunch and before the double English that closed the week for us in school. We had a teacher who I remember for being matriarchal and strong and meting out punishment as she deemed fit for whatever infraction she could find. And so that Friday afternoon, I remember getting late for class. I have never been fast at doing what I do. I do it well, but I always struggle with speed, so I'll finish last. And this particular Friday afternoon was no different. I looked at my watch. It was 20 minutes into the English lesson that we were going to walk into that was run by my English and class teacher. And I remember saying to two of my friends who'd waited for me to finish dressing up that I'm not going for that class. And I didn't go for that class. Nairobi Primary School, for those who know it, had a wide expanse of school field that you had to walk through to get to the administration block. So from the swimming pool, we needed to find a way to hide behind each sparse tree that we found so that we would not be found by the teachers. And it didn't seem to me that there was any other logical way to get away from this English teacher and from the hiding we would receive for having been late. We got a stroke of the cane for every minute we were late. And so we got to the administration block, needed to run away from all the teachers who would see us and bring us to class, or to the headmaster, Mr. Agak's office. And finally, we decided that we would run off to St. Andrew's Church, which was just down the road and within a walking distance. And we hid in the toilets that whole afternoon. I got back to school that evening just in time for my mother to pick me up from school. Many of you have been students of Mrs. Jean Washira, and so you know that by running away from one problem, I was running into another problem. Before my mother came to pick me from school that day, she had already heard that I had run away from school. And so that weekend, I went without food. I remember a friend of my dad's coming to encourage us, or encourage my parents to have pity on the little girl. And so I got porridge because Uncle Ngure had come by that day. And to this day, I don't think anyone in my family knows that the reason why I ran away from school was because I wanted to fit in, to please people, to please my parents, not to get a hiding for being late, but to show up at the end of the term with a clean report card. And I feel like today's stories have given what it means to want to live up to the expectations of those whose approval you seek, to want to tell a clean story, to want to stand up, to be counted as smart, well put together, funny, intelligent, able to get that job that you so desperately want. But none of us is built to accept failure as part of our DNA. Nobody teaches you that failure is part of the process. Nobody teaches you that it's okay to fail. It's okay to tell your story of failure so that you can edify somebody else. But tonight, I have sat at the feet of wise men and women. I have learned that it is okay to be inadequate. It is okay to start from zero. It is okay to have freckles, to be imperfect, to have a tear in that power suit that I have been putting on for the world to see. And so, ladies and gentlemen, as we close this session tonight, Toastmasters at Engage, I encourage you to look at your life. Take a self-assessment. How kind are you to yourself? More importantly, how kind are you to others? How do you pull up that person who calls you to tell you, I've lost my job, or I need 500 bob, and you're the only person I can call who will not judge me for not having 500 bob in my pocket? Tonight is an opportunity to start at day one, to do the things we've been promising to do, but cannot find the time or commitment to do consistently. Go for it. You are going to change the world. We have come to the end of what has been a powerful, memorable, and educative session. And of course, it gives me great pleasure to begin by appreciating District 114 of Toastmasters. District 114 this year is led by Anthony Wangondu, who is also a member of SEMA Toastmasters Club. In fact, as word has it, Agatha Juma and Anthony Wangondu took their maiden speeches at SEMA Toastmasters on the same evening. Thank you, Toastmasters. Thank you to Kemani, Jerry, Eric, and Elishiba for your stories and for your encouragement that things can, will, and should change because we are the masters of tomorrow. Thank you to Team Riongo and your band. Thank you to Emma and Chemutai. Thank you to the media team that has made this event possible. Thank you to Safaricom and the Michael Joseph Center for your excellent hospitality. And of course, the man and the woman who met at SEMA Toastmasters decided to create a platform to tell the African story and to change the African dynamic and trajectory because of this platform. Dawn and Agatha, thank you for your consistency. Thank you for your commitment to making a difference. It has been an incredible pleasure to be your hostess tonight. And once again, I behoove you to subscribe to Engage Talks on YouTube. Thank you, asante sana, and see you at the next Engage.